Assignment 2, Debates in Digital Culture. I've chosen debate topic 1, filter bubbles and echo chambers are real and have a negative impact on how people form their social and political views. People select information that conforms to their existing preferences. I'm interested in how the internet and social media can and does influence democracy. In considering how to present this debate, I put quite a bit of thought into what is the best way to look at these statements. Is there a practical example that might demonstrate how filter bubbles and echo chambers actually operate? Why is this important? Because if they really are a problem in our political system, then we need to understand why and how. In short, this is an issue that we should all be concerned with in a democratic society. I will present my contention, some arguments against, some arguments for, and then look at the practical example of the Brexit referendum in 2016. But first, what are bubbles and echo chambers? Filter bubbles occur where algorithms ensure that only information which conforms to the views of the user are presented based on previous searches and usage. Echo chambers are a space that ensures that people will only hear the views that align with those they already possess. So my contention in this debate is that filter bubbles and echo chambers do exist, but they do not necessarily have a negative impact. Arguments against this contention. This is not a simplistic argument. The arguments about impacts of echo chambers and filter bubbles are far from black and white, and they are far more nuanced. Kelly Garrett, in his 2009 Journal of Computer-Mediated Communication paper, Echo Chambers Online, Politically Motivated Selective Exposure Amongst Internet News Users, noted that from the time the internet use became widespread, around about the start of the century, researchers have questioned the degree to which it would impact the political landscape. This reflected recognition of the internet's ability to manage data and information flows which were well beyond that of traditional media. Would people just accept the information presented to them and cease to want to understand different perspectives, or just avoid the other points of view altogether? Iyengar and Hahn, in their 2009 Journal of Communication paper, Red Media, Blue Media, Evidence of Ideological Selectivity in Media Use, demonstrated that the demand for news varies with the perceived affinity of the news organisation to people's political preferences. They undertook an experiment which clearly showed that each side of the political divide had a clear media preference in the traditional media landscape already. The tendency to select news based on an anticipated agreement was also strengthened among more politically engaged partisans. Overall, these results suggest that the further proliferation of news media and enhanced media choices may contribute to the further polarisation of the news audience. Flaxman, Goel and Rao, in their 2016 Public Opinion Quarterly paper, Filter Bubbles, Echo Chambers and Online News Consumption, acknowledge that there are good arguments for both sides of the debate, that the rise of digital media has broadened the access to a greater diversity of information from a variety of sources, while at the same time ensuring that people are more likely to consume content that accords with their own beliefs. They acknowledge the work of commentators such as Sunstein, who predicted the rise of echo chambers in which individuals are largely exposed to conforming opinions. Garamella, De Francisci, Morales Chionis and Mathiodakis, in their paper presented at the World Wide Web Conference in 2018, Political Discourse on Social Media, Echo Chambers, Gatekeepers and the Price of Bipartisanship, highlighted how complicated interpreting the impact of echo chambers can be. It is in the area of bipartisan users that there is some concern about the echo chamber effect. Overall, bipartisan users pay a price in terms of network centrality, community connection, and endorsement from other users. This result reflects a concern that there is little appetite for compromise or negotiation on two sides of the political argument. This would suggest that once someone is partisan, they are clearly less likely to consider an alternative view. This could be a problem if it stops people from considering for and against arguments altogether. Arguments for this contention. Many scholars note the effect that echo chambers can potentially have on citizens' stance and viewpoints, more specifically, what implication this effect will have on politics. However, there are counter-arguments with supporting evidence that suggests that the effects of echo chambers are significantly lower than assumed and suggested. Colleoni, Rotzer and Arvidsson, in their 2014 Journal of Communication paper, Echo Chamber or Public Sphere, Predicting Political Orientation and Measuring Political Homophily in Twitter Using Big Data, noted in their research outcomes that it depended on how they analysed Twitter. If they looked at Twitter as a social medium, they saw higher levels of homophily and a more echo chamber-like structure of communication. In contrast, if they focused on Twitter as a news medium, looking at information diffusion regardless of social ties, they saw lower levels of homophily and a more public sphere-like scenario. Carlson, Steen, Johnson, Warbeck and Enrollis in their 2017 European Journal of Communication Echo Chamber and Trench Warfare Dynamics in Online Debates challenged the idea of the echo chamber in digital and social media by suggesting it's too simplistic. They conclude that it is not that users simply seek and engage with confirming opinions to their views, but they're also happy to seek and engage with contrary views. What was most interesting in this study was that the users did not appear to be any more likely to change their ideological position when they engaged with those who had an opposing view. Carlson et al. Referred to this thesis as trench warfare. Dubois and Blank, in their 2018 paper in Information, Communication and Society, The Echo Chamber is Overstated, the moderating effect of political interest and diverse media, that the definition and measurement of an individual being in an echo chamber has been too narrow, and that single medium studies should not be used to describe a broader media environment. The wide choice of media that currently exists means that individuals are likely to choose to receive their information from a number of sources rather than just a very limited range, and that needs to be factored into any research on the impact of an echo chamber environment. The results in this study of 2,000 randomly sampled users in the online population across Britain in 2017 suggests that those who are more likely to be caught in an echo chamber are not interested in politics and tend to not use diverse media. This means they are less likely to fact-check across a range of sources and consequently are less likely to change their minds. The question is, how does this argument work with research done on the role of social media and echo chambers during the Brexit campaign? The next few slides will outline the research that I've found to demonstrate that. One study that did give me some concern was a Royal Society's 2018 Philosophical Transaction Papers from Bastos and Messiah, The Public Accountability of Social Platforms, Lessons from a Study on the Bots and Trolls in the Brexit Campaign. As I said earlier, one of the reasons why I was interested in this topic was my concern about the impacts on our democratic political system. Bastos and Messiah highlight that this research in this field is still relatively new, and there are many ways of looking at it to try and explain those impacts. But a significant concern is that researchers struggle with scant and incomplete data because of corporate regulations governing access to public communication data. This is important research from a public perspective and should be viewed that way, and without high-quality data-driven research, it will ultimately fail to achieve that. It is also interesting to see the PLOS1 research by Mancuso and Boba in 2019, using deep learning algorithms to derive basic characteristics of social media users, the Brexit campaign as a case study. Again, it is a demonstration that we still have a way to go in developing robust research to understand the impact of social media on political discourse. Like much of the research in this space, the research presented by Hanska and Balkowitz in their 2017 book, Tweeting for Brexit, How Social Media Influenced the Referendum, indicated that the influence of social media such as Twitter is not definitive. But they certainly raise questions that the Twitter echo chamber could have influenced the Brexit referendum outcome. The analysis in their research indicated that Twitter users who supported leaving the EU were more numerous and more active than the Remain users by a factor of 1.75 to 2.3. They also found local authority districts with a greater share of Twitter users supporting leave tended to vote for leaving the EU, so Twitter activity correlated with a voting in the referendum. However, it should be noted that the factor by which leavers outnumbered and outtweeted Remainers on Twitter was a much larger level than the margin with which the Leave won the vote. Gorodnichenko, Pham and Talavera, in their 2018 NBER publication Social Media Sentiment and Public Opinions, Evidence from #Brexit and #US Election, focused on questions around how digital communication has changed the way information flows and how individuals are influenced by that. This includes looking at social media posts by other individuals and bots. Amongst their observations were that Remain supporters responded more strongly to messages from other Remain supporters compared to messages from Leave supporters, that human tweeting activity could be influenced by bot, but it wasn't clear on the level of influence that would be. It highlighted that the rise of bots in social media had a potential for significant manipulation, as people could not easily detect bots, and that the information on Twitter was disseminated extremely quickly on Twitter, reactions occurring within 1 to 2 hours. This research confirms that there is certainly an echo chamber effect in Twitter, reinforcing the beliefs that people already hold. Information from outsiders was more likely to be ignored. This would suggest that the ideological polarisation is amplified on social media applications like Twitter, thereby making it more difficult to reach consensus on issues. In the paper by Lilliker and Bonacci, The Structure of Political E-Expression, What the Brexit Campaign Can Teach Us About the Political Talk on Facebook, data was extracted from the public pages of the 4 most important Leave and Remain campaigns. They looked at their strategies and the reactions of their followers. The data showed the Leave campaign was the most proactive, not only through more posts, but also with more engaging content like this, thereby gaining greater online visibility. Leave supporters were also more likely to be cheerleaders for the campaign, applauding attacks on the Remain leaders and promoting campaign slogans. Remain subscribers similarly endorsed negative messages, but were keener to debate the detail behind slogans and critique the official campaign strategy and messaging. In contrast, Bassetta, Dutkic-Segesten and Trenzen, in their 2018 research, The Brexit Battle on Facebook, assessing echo chambers and polarisation, sought to evaluate whether citizens' commenting activity around the referendum indicated a cross-pollination of opinion or a reinforcement of views that results in political polarisation. They looked at the Facebook postings from both the campaigns and the traditional media Facebook pages. They wanted to know whether people became engaged in political news and then engaged in campaigns, or was it that the campaigns led to their comment in the news media? Some of the things they found was that there was a relatively small number of users responsible for the majority of comments. The Leave EU campaign drove most of the activity on the media Facebook pages. Most of those comments occurred on British media Facebook pages rather than campaign pages. There was a number of cross-posters, but they tended to cross-post on both media and campaign pages in that order. The media has retained their agenda-setting role on Facebook, and that political interest in the news drives users to engage with the campaigns. And that Remain supporters were more likely only to post in media pages that supported their view, whereas Leave supporters would post across different media. In a different approach to looking at the echo chamber effect on social media in the Brexit campaign, Bastos, Massey and Barantelli found that there was not the internet. It was not the internet or social media platforms that created the echo chamber effect, but rather the personal interactions that were already occurring. They looked at the geographic distances of social media posters from each side and found that the average distance between users who sent pro-Leave messages was 22 kilometres and the average of Remain supporters was 40 kilometres. These findings contradict the assumption that echo chambers discussions which only involve people with the same views are the result of online interactions alone. Conclusion. There is no doubt that filter bubbles and echo chambers exist, and certainly exist outside the internet and social media. The research has certainly demonstrated that. But there is no clear conclusion from the research about the impact of social media on those echo chambers. While most suggest that the influence is minimal, and if anything, it tends to polarise those that already have a particular view. But there are a couple of things that have struck me in looking at this, using Brexit as an example. There are concerns about the robustness of this type of research and the access to reliable data. This is a public interest issue and should be treated as such. There are several ways of approaching the research based on the data available, and the focus of the research is largely on each side of a political debate and how each side interacts or not with each other. But in a democracy, there is always a significant proportion of undecided voters, and it is not clear how social media impacts on them. The overall view of the research seems to be that the echo chamber effect has a relatively small impact, perhaps because those who are interacting have a position, and this is just reinforcing it.